Hello, my name is Annette Anderson, and I am Secretary for the Indigenous Institute of the Americas and currently the chairperson for Santa Fe Days in the Park. This is our 15th anniversary if you happen to be watching the film in the year 2018 and 2019. This is one in a series of videos to talk about our Seed Ambassador program and the components of that. But first I want to tell you a little bit about the history of our organization. So the Indigenous Institute of the Americas, or what we call IIA, was actually founded in the 1980s by co-founders Gregory Gomez, Eddie Sandoval, and Kathy Gutierrez Gomez. They wanted to look at having a nonprofit organization that preserved and protected Native knowledge from across the Americas. So our concern is not only North American Native people, but also those from all the way south in Peru, upwards to Canada, Alaska locations. So although we are focused on the entire Americas, our Santa Fe Days in the Park event is predominantly a North American Native focused event. Our artists are from the federally recognized tribes of the United States, and so that makes it a slightly different component of our organization. In 2004, Dave Oldfield from the Old Downtown Carrollton Association had traveled to Angel Fire, New Mexico, and met the Santo Domingo Disabled Veterans Artist Association. And he was very impressed with them and decided to bring them to Carrollton, Texas. So in 2004, their organization traveled to our location in Carrollton, downtown Carrollton, and set up a market that looked very much like Santa Fe, New Mexico, on an average weekend day. After that first year, it was so well received by the people of Carrollton that they decided to bring them back a second year and a third year. And so by the year 2008 through 2009, the event had grown to where they had entertainment as well as artists from across the United States visiting, but it was not an event run by a Native organization. And so we were asked, the IIA was asked to provide cultural consultation around the years of 2008, 2009. And from that point on, we have been involved with particularly their cultural path, that's what we call it, which is the children's educational area. And this is where we developed the Indigenous grocery store, which leads to the Neh Sha Market. So during that time period, I had read an article that said that 60% of the world's food supply came from Native foods that were part of our agriculture. You know, for our children, that was a pretty significant piece of information in terms of pride in our culture, things that our ancestors did that actually pertain to today's world, that when you go to the market and you see jerky and you see popcorn and you see squash and you see sweet potato pie and all of those things that have ingredients that were pre-colonial to our culture, something that my kids would feel good about knowing. Peggy Larney, who is an elder in our community, called me at one point during that time period and said, you know, if you had some money, what would you want to do? And I had this image in my mind of what I called the Indigenous grocery store. And we would go out, we would purchase one item from Kroger's, Walmart, Tom Thumb, whatever's available that reflected our culture. So jars of peanut butter, popcorn, Jiffy popcorn makers, the squashes and pumpkins from October that are always out that people use for making pumpkins. And we would set up a display of these things so that kids could see the connection between our agriculture and things that are in the everyday market. Well, when we would set it up, it was for purely display, and people would constantly say, hey, can I buy that? You know, how can I get a hold of that? And I'd say, oh, I'm sorry, it's just for display only. So over time, we realized people were actually wanting to buy some of the articles that we had in our Indigenous grocery store. And so we started selling a few little things. One of the first things that we sold was the equivalent of trail mix, but all of the seeds and the nuts that were in it were indigenous to the North America continent. It was a big hit, and we called it Neh Sha, meaning little bits of things to eat. And so time goes on, what do we name our Indigenous grocery store where we're going to sell things? And it became the Neh Sha Market. And that's how we kind of, the evolution of the Neh Sha Market that we're going to talk about today. So we had this wonderful Santa Fe Days in the Park. We needed to come up with wonderful displays for Native children and basically the outside culture to learn more about us. And then everybody decided that they wanted to buy something that were related to our culture, and thus we are here today to talk about the items that we're selling currently. Initially, the reason for having the Neh Sha Market was to give people an opportunity to sample and try things that came from Native culture. But we realized over time that it also might be a fundraiser and might help us pay for honorariums that we want to give to our guests that come from out of town, help us feed our dancers and our drum at Santa Fe Days in the Park, our annual event. But it also is a way for us to get out into the community year-round, not only as a fundraiser, but as a way to interact with the people in our community, not only our Native community, but the community at large. A lot of people are curious about our culture. A lot of times we have a hard time as a culture communicating who we are and what we do. And so sometimes tangible products are a really good way to start a dialogue about our culture and how we believe and how we do things. So keep in mind there's way over 500 individual federally recognized tribes. There are more state recognized tribes that all fluctuate from month to month, as well as our tribes that were never recognized but have been here since prior to colonial contact. And we as an organization are somehow supposed to try to preserve and represent all of those cultures. And we don't try to do that. So the things I try as the purchaser for the Neh Sha Market is to look for unique items that the general public may have no idea what to do with it, why it's valuable, what does it have to do with this general world. We usually try to go for things that are either health related and are part of our medicine ways, things that provide an education that people may not know about. And so for instance, this is something that we sell, but we also sometimes give away to schools when we go for community events. And this is a picture of what the tribal constellations were, really almost pre-tribal in our local area in Texas. And so a lot of people are used to the maps that are kind of divided by, the current names of Comanche, the current names of the Caddo, and there was a young man in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, who started developing maps that have our original names prior to colonial contact. So that's something people wouldn't know about. It's certainly not going to be something you get in your Texas history books, but it gives us an opportunity to talk to our teachers and our educators in a way that is different than what the kids are going to get with normal school district academics. The Seed Ambassador program actually started at the same time as the Indigenous Grocery Store. That came about when we looked at the statistics that said that 93% of our heirloom seeds in the whole world have been lost within the last 80 years. And that's fairly devastating to think that only 7% of the seed diversity that we have in the world is still at our hands. And so we look at the children, and especially in Native culture, and we realize that our kids are going to be the ones that are going to be handed down that legacy of protecting our seeds. Thinking about, well, how do Native people usually keep our treasures? How do we keep things close to us that offer us that come from our past and our present and our future? And one of the things that many Native people carry is a medicine bag. And sometimes they wear it inside their shirt. You may not even be aware that they wear it. Now, that's not all Native people, and not all Native people wear it day to day. But we thought that if we were going to take care of our seeds and protect our seeds, that maybe children would appreciate having what we call a seed protector bag. And so for several years now, we've been hand making these little bags out of just basically whatever cotton cloth has been donated to us. And when we go out to events, we let children, whatever seed is our I call our topic seed. So this year we have bluebonnet seeds that we're going to be handing out. The year before that it might have been a red swan bean, and before that was blue corn, before that. So each year is kind of a different theme. And so I give the children these seed protector bags, and typically there is a learning tag. And the learning tag has to do with either the seed or something about our culture, and we try to correct misunderstandings, try to correct inaccuracies. So for instance, if we are doing a demonstration of how to make a dream catcher, then the learning tag that goes onto the dream catcher has to do with the fact that that came from one tribe, that was gifted to the Ojibwe people by Creator, and is not something that is actually true to all tribes in the United States, and yet it has become marketed as a Native American type of thing that all people have in their children's rooms to either protect them from bad dreams or to bring in good dreams. And so it's fine to teach kids crafts and things like that, but we want to be sure that with our learning tags that we correct and educate and add to whatever the children are doing. So our seed protection program has to do with not only starting kids when they're little bitty to look at seeds as our babies, and that our children are our babies, and that all of those things need to be protected over the course of our lifetime, but also that children seem to understand that our seeds, since they are babies, are very precious and need to be taken care of. So we give kids the bag, we give them the seeds, and we ask them to keep it in a very safe place and keep it through their lifetime if we can, so that years down the road, when we lose our blue corn seed, when we lose our unique heirloom beans, that there's right now 5,500 children that we have given those bags to since the year 2010, I believe. And that's a lot of kids that have these little bags with different seeds in their closet or hanging from their bed somewhere safe, that one day maybe we'll have the technology to use the DNA and replicate, without it being a GMO, to replicate these heirloom seeds and bring back some of those. So the whole concept is around our children and how we can educate them to preserve our culture. And this is for all children. This is not just for Native children. This is for any child that feels a love for the earth and this planet and wants to contribute to our well-being 7 generations down the road.